Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to begin this Wednesday morning with an important day ahead for the Trump transition.
President-elect Trump is set to meet with President Biden at the White House today. It will be their first face-to-face meeting since their debate back in June. It'll also be the first time that Mr. Trump is back in the Oval Office since the end of his first term in early 2021. There was no such handoff meeting from Biden to Trump in 2020 when Mr. Trump disputed the election results. Ahead of today's big meeting, the president-elect announced new picks to fill other senior roles in his upcoming administration. Mr. Trump named tech billionaire Elon Musk and conservative activist Vivek Ramaswamy to head up a Department of Government Efficiency, which has yet to be created. He made the announcement yesterday on social media, fulfilling a campaign pledge to give Musk oversight of government spending.
President-elect Trump also named Fox News host and military veteran Pete Hegseth as his choice for defense secretary. Mr. Trump says that with Hegseth as his pick, America's enemies are, quote, on notice.
For the latest on the Trump transition, we're joined by NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns and NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. Good morning to both of you. So, Dasha, let's begin with you and these new picks by President-elect Trump to join the administration. Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, they're being tasked with taking a look at government spending. A lot of people have heard of them, but Mr. Trump's choice for defense secretary, not so well known. And so far, it seems, is the pick drawing the most backlash. Walk us through all this and the reaction to these picks.
Oh, my friends, good morning. There is just so much to unpack here as these picks are coming fast and furious. Let me start quickly with the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, as they're calling it, which is a meme and cryptocurrency reference and could mean that Ramaswamy and Musk have the power to potentially essentially dismantle the government bureaucracy. It's something that Ramaswamy campaigned on. They're talking about slashing government spending by up to $2 trillion. The question is, how much does that impact critical programs like Medicare, like Social Security, like the defense budget? The second piece, Pete Hegseth, that is also drawing some backlash. He is a Fox News host and commentator. Yes, he served in the military, but he does not have any government experience, and that is concerning to defense experts and people who have served in the government for a long time, given how critical that position is. He also holds some views that people find controversial. He has said, for example, that he doesn't believe women should serve in the military. He is Trump's guy to go after wokeism in the military, which is another thing that President-elect Trump campaigned on. So these are consequential choices that are unexpected and non-traditional that could have a big impact, guys.
Dasha, also President-elect Trump named former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee as his pick for U.S. ambassador to Israel. Now, if confirmed, he'd be the first non-Jewish person to hold the role in more than a decade. What role is he expected to play, and how much of an impact could he have there?
So Huckabee is a self-described Zionist. He is a staunch supporter of Israel. He has advocated for a one-state solution, which is a departure from U.S. policy and position. And he is likely to play a very active role, given everything that we know, that I'm sure you'll talk about later in the show, that's going on in the Middle East and the war between Israel and Hamas, guys.
Monica, let's bring you in and talk about today's big meeting at the White House between Mr. Trump and President Biden. What can we expect in Trump's first visit to the White House in nearly 4 years?
Yeah, and really before 4 years ago, this was a really common tradition. This is something that outgoing presidents normally would invite the winners of the election to come visit the White House, to sit down in the Oval Office. We, of course, saw it with then President Obama inviting then President-elect Trump 8 years ago, but then that didn't take place in 2020. So today will be fascinating because of the dynamics of the people who were in this meeting. Of course, it was President Biden, who was the nominee up until 3 months ago, who was facing off with Donald Trump. And it was also Joe Biden, who was coming into office last time, but wasn't extended this courtesy. So we know the two are expected to sit down. We'll see how long the meeting is. Back when Obama and Trump met, it lasted more than 90 minutes. Then President Obama called it an excellent discussion that was wide-ranging. And then the two briefly spoke, and that was that. Now, there are a couple other elements to this that last time we can draw upon to see if they're going to take place. But for instance, today, former First Lady Melania Trump is not expected to accompany her husband and sit down with current First Lady Jill Biden. Now, that's something we're told that the invitation was extended to her, but maybe that will happen down the line. We shouldn't expect to see that today. And then secondly, Vice President Harris, of course, lost the election to Donald Trump, but she's still the sitting vice president. So normally she would extend an invitation to the vice president-elect. So in this case, Senator J.D. Vance to come for a meeting to visit the Naval Observatory where the Vances will be living come January. And that hasn't happened yet. So many layers, so much complexity to everything that happened in the election and now what's happening. But the priority for the Biden administration is to really emphasize this peaceful transfer of power. And that's what they're going to try to put on display to try to really pledge to have a smooth transition in these last 60 or so days.
And in those last 60 or so days, Monica, what are the top priorities for the president and his administration in the time he has left?
And we know that there are going to be things from legislation that they pass that they're going to try to implement. They're going to try to shore up some final commitments from private companies when it comes to things like manufacturing or infrastructure, things that they want to make sure are pretty much put in place before the Trump administration returns. And then there are things like making sure that all of the funding that was allocated to Ukraine gets out the door. That's something else that they're going to be prioritizing. And there's really this emphasis on trying to, quote, Trump-proof and safeguard some of these policies and programs that they know once Donald Trump returns to the White House could be undone given their very differing views on a lot of key policy issues. Savannah and Joe.
Dasha and Monica, thank you both.
Well, Senate Republicans will gather behind closed doors today on Capitol Hill to select a replacement for Mitch McConnell as Senate Majority Leader. Here's who's in the running. South Dakota Senator John Thune, Texas Senator John Cornyn, and Florida Senator Rick Scott. All three are vying to win votes in the secret ballot election, as well as the favor of President-elect Donald Trump.
The choice to replace longtime leader McConnell could shape the future of the Senate and the GOP party under a Trump presidency. At this hour, control of the House still hangs in the balance, with Republicans holding the lead over Democrats. Whichever party reaches 218 House seats will win the majority. That's a number the GOP might reach as soon as today.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale joins us with more. Ali, good morning. So tell us more about which senators are in the running for majority leader. We just listed them. Tell us a little bit about each and how they're trying to appeal to their colleagues and the president-elect.
Hey guys, good morning. Some really fascinating dynamics that we're about to see play out on Capitol Hill today, in large part because Republicans haven't had to elect a new leader in nearly 20 years. McConnell has been sort of the gatekeeper to this conference for the last 18 years, and we've seen the role that he's played at various times, especially in the Trump era. McConnell is no fan of the former president. The president-elect himself has spared no shortage of negative words and phrases for the leader himself. But now he's got three people who are vying to replace him, and they each cut very different profiles, both when you look through the Trump lens, but when you also look through the lens of how the Senate is going to operate. For example, John Thune has been McConnell's number two for several years now. He's studied at the feet of one of the greatest procedural tacticians in Senate history. That's something that could really come in handy, especially as Republicans try to leverage the full force and power of holding the majority of both chambers in this upcoming 2-year period. Thune is widely seen, guys, as the favorite here, but in large part because Cornyn could peel off some of that more quote-unquote establishment Republican vote. Rick Scott's challenge here presents an interesting one, in part because he challenged McConnell a few years ago. The last time he only got about 10 or 11 votes at that point, but it's a reminder of the growing pro-MAGA faction within the Senate Republican ranks that could be something that ends up being in Scott's favor. Trump at this point is staying out of it. That's what Thune and Cornyn both prefer. But at the same time, Scott has really been trying to leverage his pro-Trumpness and his consistent pro-Trumpness to try to bring people to his cause. Remember, both Thune and Cornyn have cut against Trump at various various times. They've mended fences, but this is going to be the true test of that.
So, Allie, that this is happening behind closed doors could be a factor here. Of the three candidates you mentioned, is there a front runner?
The frontrunner, I think, technically is John Thune, but the Senate is unpredictable. Maybe a little bit less lately because the House has been overshadowing it these last few years. But this is a real moment where we could see some kind of a shakeup. This is a secret ballot. So as of right now, we're going into it expecting that we're not going to know who votes for who. There are some senators who are absolutely fine to keep it that way. But there is going to be a motion at some point to basically open this process up. Hey, do we want to make it transparent? Do we want to make our votes public? That, ironically, will also be done by a secret ballot vote. So if they decide to change the rules, we'll get a lot more insight into this. If they don't, then it's going to go forward the way we think it is, which is secret ballot. And whoever makes it to the magic number of 27 on this side of the chamber in this case is the one who becomes the new leader of this party on the Senate side.
And Allie, now let's talk the House side. So we're still waiting to see which party ultimately has that majority. Remind us the current balance of power, where that stands, which races we are waiting for, and any indication how they might go.
Well, you guys are right to point out that everyone's trying to count on the House side to the magic number of 218. Republicans right now, I believe by our count, are right almost there at 217, which is why we believe we could be getting close to seeing this balance of power called. There's a few outstanding races, specifically those in California, but Democrats are happy to say that they've been able to notch a few wins, at least in terms of candidates declaring victory, in places like California's 47th. That's them hanging on to a district that was already held by a Democrat. They needed that. Right now, in my conversations, Republicans are very much operating like they have the majority. They're also going behind closed doors today for a much less sexy and less palace intrigue vote of will they keep Mike Johnson as speaker. We expect that he'll be fine, but his true test comes later in January. Instead, for Republicans, they're sort of forging ahead. And my conversations with Democratic sources are, look at what we've gained. The majority is going to be a very slim one. And they think that they can find some inroads and some real chances to play opposition to Trump and Republicans in this coming Congress.
All right, Ali Vitale, thank you so much.
World leaders are gathering in Azerbaijan for the COP29 climate conference. Their goal, rein in carbon emissions in the burning of fossil fuels.
For more on this, NBC News correspondent Maura Barrett joins us. Maura, good morning. So first off, oil and gas, they account for about half of the host country, Azerbaijan's exports. Talk to us about the goals of this climate conference, what we've seen so far, and how that fact is playing in.
Well, guys, the irony is not lost that this COP is hosted, and last COP, frankly, in a really heavy export country. And that's why we're seeing a lot of tension on the ground. I think it's also important to note that the United States is the #1 export of oil and gas. And so that's something that's going to come up in conversation as well. But there's tension on the ground at the conference, especially between rich countries and developing countries. Many who blame the wealthy for not doing enough, they say, to take credit or to find solutions for what they caused, essentially. And so that's why a big goal of this climate summit is ultimately around climate finance. They're looking to fund hundreds of billions of dollars to make that switch towards clean energy, phase out fossil fuels, but then also boost the ongoing pledge, part of the Paris Agreement, to triple renewable energy by 2030 to keep warming under 1.5 degrees. Now, the big headline that we're looking at right now, the UK announced new ambitions to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 81%, and that's by 2035. And so there's still lots more to watch in the 2 weeks ahead, but this is just the early days of the conference so far, guys.
And one big headline is that President Biden isn't there. Can you talk about why he's not there and just what his administration is hoping to achieve in this final conference before the Trump administration takes over, with obviously very different theories on climate change?
Right, exactly. And I think, as you noted, President Biden has a very famous guest coming to the White House today. So he's a little busy on that front. But his team is really head down, making sure that they can get in a lot of extra work in their final moments of the Biden administration. That's why we saw his climate team representing the U.S. abroad. I was actually able to speak with the White House National Climate Advisor, Ali Zaidi, overnight. And that final sprint is something he touched on in our conversation.
We're going to be sprinting through the tape, whether it's the 2 weeks of this COP or the 2 months ahead. We're going to be making sure that the most Americans, the breadth of our economy, can benefit from the impact of the president's investment agenda into clean energy. The federal government has come in like boosters on a rocket. The rocket is the private sector. And I think on a lot of the transformation that we seek, we have already achieved escape velocity, and the American people will benefit from that in the years ahead.
That interview happening in the late overnight hours because Azerbaijan is 9 hours ahead of us, so they are busy in their work for the day. But Zaidi also previewed work that they're looking to get done in the next few months around expanding nuclear, continuing to bring down methane emissions. And something that he noted in our conversation is the fact that he thinks the climate policies that he and the Biden administration enacted is built to outlast the next 4 years. He said it's not something that can be eliminated in one election or another administration.
All right, Maura, thank you so much.
Thanks for doing that overnight interview for us also. Well, now to the wildfires that continue to threaten the Northeast. Today, millions of people are under red flag warnings as 9 fires burn across the region.
The high winds and dry conditions are making it harder for firefighters to gain control of what's known as the Jennings Creek fire. It has grown more than 5,000 acres to more than 5,000 acres along the New Jersey-New York border. The area has not seen a good amount of rain in weeks, and concerns are growing about the water supply.
NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa joins us now from Monmouth County, New Jersey. Emily, good morning. So tell us a little bit about where you are, what you're seeing. I know there's a reservoir behind you there. How do these things look compared to normal?
Hey there, guys. Well, I can tell you this is not typically what the Manasquan Reservoir looks like. It's hard to recognize. Typically, this is a place popular for boating. It's popular for fishing. But where I'm walking right now, I shouldn't be able to because this is about 50%. It's about half of its total 4-some billion gallon capacity. And it's scenes like this that are plaguing the entire region, the Northeast, which is experiencing its worst drought since 2002. Here in New Jersey, it saw its driest October on record. There are parts of the Garden State that are actually experiencing an 8-inch deficit in rainfall. And so we're what is average for this time of year. And we're seeing that impact people in different ways. Some farmers, like cranberry farmers, they can't flood their bogs with waterways and reservoirs. They have to pump water from deep underground. Other farmers have to truck feed in for their animals because there hasn't been enough rain to grow grass on the ground. It's why the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and state officials today are considering upgrading from a water supply drought watch to a warning that could reallocate water sources throughout the state. It also could urge people to limit their water usage. As you can see, it is a strange, unusual, and dire situation, guys.
So, Emily, just where do things stand with fires right now in the Northeast? What areas are most at risk?
So I'll start with the good news. We are seeing some relief from those strong wind gusts we saw yesterday. Yesterday, red flag warnings had impacted more than 30 million people, gusts topping 30 miles an hour. The big concern with that is that it picks up embers, it picks up the flames and spreads the fire at a more rapid pace. We're seeing those numbers come down a little bit today, but firefighters are still contending with really some impressive challenges. You look at one of the largest fires, the Jennings Creek fire just north of here. It stretches more than 5,000 acres between North Jersey into New York, and they're having to deal with steep terrain. So it's largely a fire fought on foot, also by air. They're using helicopters to drop water across that fire, continuing in the firefight. But a major concern moving forward, there is no rain in sight, which means they are continuing to have high elevated wildfire risk concerns because of the dry conditions that are fueling the fires. Just to give you a sense of how unusual this is for New York, you look at the Jennings Creek fire alone, it's burned some 2,700 acres so far. That is nearly double the amount of acreage that is burned for the entire state for the entire year, guys.
Wow. Emily Aketa, some startling facts there. Thank you so much.
For more on these fire alerts and the dry conditions, let's get a check at your Morning News Now weather.
Angie Lastman's here with that. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Emily mentioned not a whole lot in the way of relief as far as rain is concerned, but those winds have come down slightly, but not enough to completely eliminate some of those alerts that we see up and down parts of the Northeast. Stretching from Georgetown to Boston, we've got the fire alerts. The elevated fire risk is in the orange, where you see that red flag warning. That's the brighter pink colors. We still, of course, have the dry vegetation. You just heard Emily talking a lot about it. The humidity remains low, and those winds are going to be not quite as gusty as yesterday, but they'll still be something that we'll potentially have to contend with through the day today. When it comes to rain, we do have some rain that's going to help alleviate some droughts in other places. So the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic, you're going to see some rain. And this system is what's going to be on the move here over the next couple of days to bring that rain. Those locally heavy downpours stretching from the Midwest down to the Mississippi Valley as this system continues to work its way to the east through the day today. By tomorrow, here comes the rain for the Mid-Atlantic. But notice what happens. A essentially New York and points north of that left out of picking up any of that really much needed rain. So we won't see the drought relief for that region, but we will, of course, from the Midwest to the Mid-Atlantic. That's going to help for folks there. Where we're concerned, though, as far as the flooding, that's going to be a today and tonight kind of potential for the time frame on that. We could see anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of rain in a short period of time. So any of that really saturated soil from recent rain, especially across the Mississippi Valley, is going to be problematic for folks. Jackson, Alexandria, that's where I'd really watch for the better chance of some of this flooding to occur as the day and even goes on. Out west, a very different story. Plenty of rain, plenty of snow on tap. We've got those winter alerts up and down parts of California, the Sierra and Cascade ranges. Those are going to pick up some of that additional snow and rain over the next couple of days. We'll watch for the flooding concern near burn scar areas out west, but for the most part, this is going to make it difficult when it comes to travel. We'll also see some additional wind associated with this, and this will be something that we watch through the next couple of days. And as if that wasn't enough to keep track of, we've also got an area of disturbed weather that we're watching in the Caribbean Sea. Hurricane season not over yet. We've got a good chance that this is going to develop. Honestly, it will develop the next day or two. What happens beyond that is going to be something that we're going to keep a close eye on. We've got really warm waters. We've got low shear. That all means that these conditions are perfect for this system to eventually develop and strengthen significantly. Here's what happens, though. Over the short term, really through this weekend, a high pressure sits in the Gulf of Mexico. That's going to kind of block it from moving anywhere near the United States. That eventually moves out of the picture, though, and we could see that low shift into the Gulf of Mexico by early next week, guys. Then we'll watch for what it could potentially mean for the Gulf Coast of the United States.
What does low shear mean?
Basically, shear is what inhibits, it's one of the things that inhibits strengthening from these systems.
Okay.
So when you have a high shear, it's changes of wind speed as you go up in the atmosphere. That knocks it down. So when you have low shear, the environment is really good. You have the fuel from the warm water. You don't have anything stopping it essentially from strengthening, which is kind of the environment that's going to sit in for the next couple of days. Not what we want to see late November, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I love learning weather things. Thank you.
You got it.
Well, in Kentucky, a large explosion at a plant near downtown Louisville killed at least 2 people and injured several others on Tuesday.
Officials said some suffered life-threatening injuries. The blast happened around 3 p.m. local time at a company that makes natural food coloring. It prompted a shelter-in-place order for the surrounding area.
NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa joins us live from Louisville with the latest. Maggie, good morning. What do we know at this point about the cause and what's being done to figure out why it happened?
Yeah, guys, good morning. The cause remains a mystery of this explosion, which, by the way, we're about a block from where this happened. So we're going to push in really quick and just show you kind of the drama factor of this wreckage. It's really striking when you see it up close. We're told homes near us and, frankly, within a mile of here shook when this happened. But again, everybody knows how massive this was. No one knows right now exactly how this happened. Louisville Fires, I step back in here, are leading this investigation this morning with state and federal partners. And we're told that includes a federal reconstruction team from alcohol, tobacco, firearms. And that being said, we expect a press conference from local leaders and an update later on this morning. But for now, everybody's just kind of cleaning up the damage, cleaning up the debris and taking in the scope of the damage. And I should point out what you're looking at right now is video caught on a sky camera of the explosion happening. You can see how massive it was and understand, guys, why this scared so many people in this city.
No kidding. And Maggie, it has been reported this isn't the first time we've seen an explosion at this location. What have you learned about that?
Right. Right. So this company is called Givaudan Sense Color, and it's a big factory, big plant here in the Louisville area. And we found a federal report that shows back in 2003, there was another explosion that killed 1 person. And according to that report, that explosion was deemed avoidable. So our teams are still kind of combing through that. And again, we don't want to jump to any conclusions that 20 years later, you know, there are any commonalities between why this happened and why that one happened. But of course, it's fresh on the minds. Who could forget that of people here in the Louisville area? And now nationally, we're kind of connecting these dots as federal authorities zero in on this. This is a statement from the company. We want to read this here. They say our priority right now is on our team members, the families of those we have lost, and those that were injured in this accident. They went on to say they're in touch with them, they're working with the investigation, and they're deeply saddened by this, guys.
Maggie, what is next in the investigation? And before we let you go, also tell us what we know about those who were hurt.
We know that close to a dozen people were hurt, and 2 of them are in critical condition at a local hospital. The 2 deaths, actually, guys, were an update overnight. We were hoping, of course, who wouldn't, that nobody would pass away from this. We had heard that close to a dozen were injured last night, but we knew that some of those injuries were serious. So, again, the deaths coming in the overnight hours. Right now, we're not being told names, ages, anything like that, but the company is confirming that the 2 who passed away were team members at that company. As far as what's next, it's really just kind of those federal authorities, those federal resources swooping in here on Louisville. We can hear helicopters overhead as all the attention is on this site and this neighborhood. Again, ATF, state and local authorities all over this at this hour.
Maggie Vespa, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.